Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine. The Holy Trinity of Rock. Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath. That is how those three bands have been described as the decades have rolled by. The Holy Trinity, the bands that formulated a whole genre of music, whether it was just called rock music, heavy metal, hard rock, whatever it was, those three bands were seen as the Trinity, the pyramid of perfection. This video is about ranking those three bands. Now, when I decided to do this, I was initially just going to do it based on my own feelings, how the bands feel to me. I was going to do it based on what it was like growing up in the 70s when I became musically aware in around 1972-ish, properly. I was aware of music before then, but when I started buying records. How that changed, if it did, and how I feel about those three bands now. But rather than just do it based on my own feelings, I decided to ask you, the Now Spinning Magazine audience. And what I hope from doing this video is that many of you who didn't take part in the surveys will put your thoughts down in the comments, either on the website or the YouTube channel, wherever you are viewing or listening to this. And I also realised that saying, how would you rank Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple or Black Sabbath, was a bit like asking you to pick your favourite child, because there is no right or wrong answers here. Each one of these three bands are legendary. They are just part of the foundations of rock music. So there are no right or wrong answers here. So what I perhaps should have said is, which one of these three bands do you play the most? And then rank them in order of which band you play the most. In some ways, that's probably a kinder and easier way of saying it, in that if you play a band more than another, it's probably because you'd rather listen to them more than another, so therefore you prefer them more than the other. So, what do I think? How do I rank Zeppelin, Sabbath or Purple? In the early 70s, I'd heard of Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and Deep Purple. I was still listening to Sweet, T-Rex and Slade, etc., Status Quo. And so the first of these three bands I heard were Purple. Someone lent me Machine Head. And then from Machine Head, because they hadn't got it in the local shop, I bought in Rock. So apart from hearing Black Knight and Paranoid and a Zeppelin song here and there to rock disco at school, Purple were the band that I leant towards. So in my world, it was Deep Purple first, Black Sabbath second, and Led Zeppelin third. But I can be honest and say that when I was at school, when I was growing up in the 70s in the UK, the way the world saw these three bands was Led Zeppelin were first, Deep Purple was second, and Black Sabbath were third. And I don't think that really changed at all. Even where I was born in Birmingham, that the way those bands were seen was like that. Although Sabbath and Purple might have changed position depending on which area of Birmingham or which bunch of rock fans you talk to, Led Zeppelin were always sitting at the top. But for me, they were in third place, apart from a short period of time in the mid-70s when Physical Graffiti was released in 1975, and Ritchie Blackmore left Deep Purple, and I thought that Deep Purple would never be the same again, and Led Zeppelin rose to the top. I was obsessed with Physical Graffiti, and so at that point Led Zeppelin were everything. But it wouldn't be long before I reverted back to where I was. And how do I feel now? I feel the same. If I had to, which of those three bands do I play the most, it would be Deep Purple, then Black Sabbath, then Led Zeppelin. So what was the results of asking you, my viewers, listeners and readers, what you think? Now, this was interesting, although not totally surprising. So I'm just going to get straight to the results. And I did three surveys. I did one for my patrons. I did one on Twitter or X, and I did one on YouTube. Overall, 1,400 people responded. So on the vast majority of the sample, which was 1,200 odd, on YouTube, it was as follows. Black Sabbath came first with 41% of the votes. Deep Purple came second with 30% of the votes, and Led Zeppelin came third at 29% of the votes. On Twitter, it was Purple at 35.1% of the votes, Sabbath at 32.4%, and Zeppelin at 32.4%. And on Patron, it was Purple at 48%, Zeppelin at 30%, and Sabbath at 22%. I think the YouTube survey is probably the one I expected it to be like. Because, let's be honest here, Led Zeppelin stopped at the end of the 70s. And Jimmy Page never really seemed to get a momentum going to whatever he did afterwards, whether it was with Firm or with Coverdale or solo stuff. Plant, outside of that, has and still has a tremendously successful solo career where he's reinvented himself, and now he's really comfortable in his skin revisiting Zeppelin's archive of music, if you like. But let's be fair, Led Zeppelin are not a going concern. They are a band of that time. They are untouchable. They have the image. They have the iconography of logos and album design and the way they protected their brand, apart from in more recent times archival radio broadcasts popping out every left, right and centre. You see, Jimmy had probably thought more about this. He would have released these in a controlled fashion himself, and maybe they would have been more successful, etc. So with all the Zeppelin repackaging, etc., there's a feeling that I feel that they protected the brand so tightly that they've probably lost some of the imagination with the younger audience of social media, all the Facebook groups and social media channels, etc., and all the ongoing arguments and ranking videos and whatever. That Zeppelin are kind of they're kind of in aspic. They're protected forever, but they're not seen as now. Purple are still going. Purple have probably had the least control over their back catalogue and their image than any of the other bands. So there are multiple live albums. There have been multiple lineup changes. They are still delivering fantastic music, with their latest album at the time of doing this video, Equals One, being a prime example. But they never really had... They were a musicians band. When I say musicians band, they were a rock fans band, and it was about the music. It was about the kind of instrumentation. It was about the athleticism of the musicians, if like. It was about John Lord, Richie Blackmore, Ian Pace, Steve Morse, whether it's Joe Satriani or McBride or Tommy Bolin, whoever's coming in and out, or Don Airey. It was about the musicianship, about the jamming aspect of the band. Zeppelin was Plant, the mysteriousness of Page, but Purple was about excitement in the way the music was played, whereas Sabbath, who basically, as the years have rolled by, it has become more apparent as the lens of time has shone down on these three bands seen as the Holy Trinity of heavy metal or hard rock, whatever you want to pitch it now. Zeppelin now might be seen more blues rock or hard rock. In the 70s, heavy metal, there was no thrash metal, there was no priests at this point. There was just these bands, and they were all classed as heavy metal. I've got a magazine called Music Scene from 1974, and it classed what it felt were heavy metal bands, and these three were at the top. They were seen as the Holy Trinity of this style of music. But Sabbath, of course, it's become more associated with them as being heavy metal, and the image of Ozzy and the whole way they position themselves means that I'm not surprised that Sabbath came top. Almost 10% more people ranked Sabbath higher or played Sabbath more than the other two bands. And you see this on social media. You see this when everyone talks about Ozzy or Dio or whatever to do with Sabbath. they're still seen as now, and there's a whole, I think, a younger demographic is now powering the way that Sabbath are perceived. Whatever the magazine is, whether it's Metal Hammer or the more extreme metal publications online, Sabbath can still be listed next to the most extreme metal you can listen to. Whatever it is, Sabbath is still mentioned. Whereas I think Zeppelin are probably, when you think about it now, and some of the albums, the blues influence never really left them. Sabbath obviously had a blues influence in the first album, but they soon dropped it as they moved more into their own boots, without saying phrase wear boots, and created their own style and genre of music. Purple also had, dabbled with the blues in various tracks, but they also became more close to metal and the instrumentation, burn, almost like kind of a template for kind of like symphonic kind of metal that Malmsteen was looking at as well. So I'm not surprised that's how it's panned out. That is ranking the Holy Trinity of rock music from the UK as it was. I know that if you're in the US there'd be maybe different bands, but it is Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple. So which one of those bands do you play the most? How would you rank them? I know it's like picking your favourite child. There is no right or wrong answers here. They're all the best bands ever from this period who defined a style of music. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying the course. Remember, you can buy merch for Now Spinning magazine and be part of this lovely little community of music collectors from all around the world. Remember, music is the healer and the doctor. Please subscribe, ring that little bell, share, like, check out the podcast and of course the website and all the social media channels. Become a patron or YouTube member. Please support what I do here to help me do more of it. Take care, all of you, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon.